Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Senate Podcast. This will be episode 19. Now, if you're very perceptive hearing-wise and you're watching the YouTube version of this, you'll be like, that's not Caleb Johnston. And you're correct. This is actually the remake of the classic Nicolas Cage, John Travolta movie, Face Off. I switched faces with Caleb for this episode. So he's hosting, but he just has my face and my voice.
Somehow we did a face swap.
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know. We just woke up in this weird laboratory. It was weird, but I don't want to ask no questions. No, I'm gonna be hosting this episode. So it'll probably be the worst one naturally. But today we are going to be talking about all things mental health, the relationship between your physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional state. Talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, because it is the month of May. And later, talking about certain pieces of media that have helped us in very trying times in our lives and how we use art to cope, all that stuff. But first things first, how are you doing, Caleb?
I'm great. I've been having so my last 2 weeks I've been very busy at work, and
same.
I'm finally at the end of it now where I can just enjoy the weekend. And I'm glad you're hosting this because it's funny, speaking of just overall mental health and physical well-being, we took a week break from the show, and that was because we were had a crossover episode, and then we had a special, bonus episode. So just for our own well-being, we took a week off. So we both had busy weeks, but we're finally at the end of that where we can just have a relaxing weekend and actually plan some stuff to do, which we got some top secret stuff we're doing shortly. But as of right now, I'm really excited for this episode. I'm excited that you're hosting because when there are certain topics that we want to go over that you also have a strong passion for, I want you to be able to host, whatever topics that you want to be able to host. So there'll be actually some more episodes when we do certain retrospectives coming up where you'll take the lead on that and host. But it is Mental Health Awareness Month, so that closely relates to all things pop culture and nostalgia, because really it all kind of ties together, which you kind of mentioned and we'll get into. So I'm doing great right now, and I'm excited for this episode.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Yeah, talking about the prequels was fun, but it wore me out, and it wore you out too, I'm sure.
Yes, especially the last one. Yeah.
So I wanted to open up the episode before we get into specific topics. I just thought, because this episode came about in an interesting way. Caleb actually tagged me in a post on Twitter. It was somebody talking about if you have a podcast for Mental Health Awareness Month, a way to incorporate that or whatever would be to talk about mental health or just do a check-in, with the people you do the podcast with. And, he was like, would you be down for this? And I'm like, I'm not somebody who's has an easy time being vulnerable. I have to essentially be put between a rock and a hard place before I show my feelings, which is something I'm trying to work on. It's a flaw men have for some reason. Toxic masculinity, whatever. But, with the place I am in my life, I was like, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the most fun thing in the world, but I'd be down with it. So, I thought it'd be cool to kind of endear, ourselves to the viewers a little bit, just to kind of break the ice. So, I'll let you talk about, how's your mental health journey been, this year? Have there been any valuable lessons you learned through experiences that you've had and anything like that?
Yeah, this is actually a great question because we started the podcast in November, and that was, close to the new year. So really I think about it like, okay, how have I changed, and how do I feel now versus the start of the podcast, just as a time frame. And what's funny is I'll talk to people, and I've talked to you and Andy um, about all of the changes we went through as a team throughout just the beginning of the podcast. And I've had three different shift changes with my job. Not necessarily new jobs, but just my shift would change. So I went from working, a night shift to then a weekend type of shift, and now I'm finally on a first shift schedule, a morning. And that's tough in every aspect of, your physical, mental, and spiritual
Yeah.
well-being.
I
It
used to work
affects
at a
all of it.
grocery store, and that was what I had to deal with. It freaking sucks. And like even a little bit, my
It
last job
does.
at Reading Hospital, you just kind of work whenever they need you to, and it that ain't no way to live long term, man.
Yeah, so the beginning of the year, I was on a terrible schedule. I was on, weekends. I worked two 8-hour shifts and two 12-hour shifts, and then sometimes an extra 8-hour shift. And it was terrible. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have a personal life. I couldn't do anything I had passions for, like music or video editing or even playing games, just something relaxing. I didn't have time for it. On my days off, I would be asleep and recovering, so I wouldn't even, have time for that. So I was doing pretty bad. And it was sad because this podcast is a passion project and I didn't have time for it. Um, you know, I didn't have time for a lot of things, but long story short, I ended up getting this morning shift job, which I was trying so hard to get, and I finally got it. And it's funny because you just went to first shift, so now we're both on the same schedule, and it works out perfect.
Yeah.
Serendipitous, if you will. But now I'm doing a lot better. So it's funny because if we would have had this episode 2 months ago, it would be like, oh, I'm not doing good. I need things to change. But now I'm at that point where I'm like, I'm just, I'm glad. It's like a weight has been lifted off me in every different aspect, which I'm going to get into it further as we get through this episode. But as of right now, there's just the top down overall. I'm doing, I'm doing good as of this year. I'm happy with the way my schedule is, my personal schedule, and with the way the podcast has been doing, and just my other, you know, passion projects and my personal things that I do, like working out or with like church or hanging out with friends, which was I was doing today, and I got plans to do it tomorrow. So it's going very well. So what about you? Since we kind of started this podcast in November, so how have things changed? Because I know some things, for you are a little bit different now.
I'll start with my job. So
Yeah.
I before the job I have now, I'm a janitor at a college in my city. Um I was working at Reading Hospital in the nutrition services department, and it was all right for a while, and then, the pandemic happened and everything, excuse me, kind of slowed down a lot, like everything was pretty slow. And actually that was nice. That was a nice break, we didn't really have to work that hard. But then, like things started to get back to normal, and then we had regular patients plus the influx of of patients who had COVID. So then it got really, really hectic, and like people were leaving because they were getting fed up with everything, management and all that stuff. To be fair, some of my managers were actually cool, but some of them, how every job has, those managers that you wouldn't mind if they went for a hike and never came back. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny.
So it got really, really bad. Like that was probably at least for a while, like since that was like the worst period of my life in a way. Like I was like just at work, just miserable,
Are
just
you talking about during
miserable.
COVID?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, it was the pandemic. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but it's like, a
Yeah.
tale of two cities, that line. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times because, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, I'd never been better than I was then. But, so, I got a job at Albright College, and then at first for a while my job was basically just like sanitizing certain things because pandemic, we want to fight germs as much as we can. And then long story short, recently I got a new boss, and then he approached me, the guy I work with, and one of the guys who works in the morning, about like being part of this project team that'll like shampoo carpets, scrub floors, stuff like that. So I had realized that like for a while I had gotten kind of stuck in a rut because I wasn't really doing anything at work.
Yeah.
And then now it's like I'm in a position where I'm working hard. And, I realized that I'm actually somebody who kind of thrives better under some pressure
Yeah.
in a way. Like you know, I can't just be stagnant for too long because then like now it's like, I'm working hard and I feel like I'm like also trying to motivate myself to be like creative and exercise and stuff because that's something that I'd gotten stuck in a rut partially because of mental health stuff, as I'll talk about later. Um, so as far as my job, that's what's going on now. I'm liking it so far. It's really rewarding, to work hard and then you get home and you just feel, really good about yourself. As far as the mental health thing, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of not great. I'm not necessarily like too depressed. Like that's not. I mean always that's always kind of been there a little bit throughout my life, but like it's mainly I'm just like anxious about everything. Like like you look in the news and see the state of society and certain things, and like worrying about the future, kind of trying not to be a nihilist, but also can't help but feeling like we're all screwed. The whole world's coming to an end, all that stuff. And then to um reference Star Wars, I'm trying to make the steps to get off of my mom's oyster farm for the first time, and I don't know how to go about it at all. I don't know. Everything's expensive. I don't know how much money I need to save. I kind of want to live somewhere isolated and get one of those tiny houses, but it's like you have to get land, and like I just don't know what to do about anything. There are like so many things I want to do, and I'm just like, it's like,
Yeah.
like I've taken my first steps into a larger universe, kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm struggling with now, just trying to find some kind of anchor in anything. And I actually kind of feel like we're gonna talk about the relationship between spiritual, mental, and physical a little later. But I feel like because like I alluded to in 2020, long story short, I had like left my church and I was kind of reevaluating certain things about like spirituality. And ironically, that was the most spiritual year of my life, and that was when I stopped going to church. Interesting. It's almost like that's not an accident. Uh, so I don't know, I'm kind of feeling like I want to find some type of grounded spirituality, not because like I feel like like when you're religious, like you feel like you have to be, or you'll be screwed forever or whatever. But like I just feel like I don't know. I kind of want to. Like I don't feel like I'm totally satisfied not believing in anything. I
Well,
know
I
that was a little long winded, but I mean, so
no, you're
right
fine.
now I'm just in a period of a lot of change. I yeah, trying to spread my wings and fly. Basically.
I love all the Star Wars references, and that the first one you brought up, I think that's my favorite quote ever from George. But it's funny because you've mentioned every single aspect of your just general health and well being, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all of it. It's like a circle, and you're talking about one part that is broken, and when it's broken, it affects everything else in the circle.
Yeah, for sure.
All of it's related. So I can go down the rabbit hole if you want. Um, I can jump in. I can go down the rabbit hole. Um, Talking about the relationship between physical, mental, spiritual, and all of that. So
Yeah, you can do that because then I have a question relating
okay,
to spirituality. So I'll let you take the wheel on that.
okay. So I love studying this stuff. Not just mental health, but specifically the physiology of it, the hormones, the everything in your body, the receptors, the chemicals, everything. I love studying it, and I could really go down a rabbit hole, but I'll start with something simple that you kind of brought up, which is you feel a little bit anxious, and what that is that's cortisol in your body. And a few months
Yeah.
ago, actually, around when we started the podcast, was no uh, hyperbole, no exaggeration, was the worst time of my life ever. And
Yeah.
one thing I noticed was I was extremely anxious, depressed, literally all of the side effects of cortisol. Everything, high blood pressure, irritability, upset, stomachs, bloating, everything, fatigue, everything. So what I did was I actually worked on how can I naturally, or maybe with supplements, help lower my cortisol levels, which is something physical in your body that you can do to help with the mental aspect, with not feeling depressed or not feeling anxious. So that really sent me down this journey of the relationship between your body and your mind. And I started taking a supplement to help lower cortisol, and it kind of helped, but mainly what helped was changing my schedule, getting on a first shift schedule where I could take that the broken part of that circle, and now everything is connected. So I would be getting the right amount of sleep, which is critical for mental health. That is critical for your physical health, getting enough sleep. Waking up in the mornings and getting sunlight, that's another thing that is extremely, extremely important. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about morning routines, having some type of morning routine, which I could really get into the down the rabbit hole about productivity and morning, routines and all that. But it's funny you brought up something about you feel better when you just work hard at work in the mornings. You know what I mean? And a little bit of cortisol is actually good. Your body has this natural cortisol spike every 24 hours, and I believe it's like after you wake up in the mornings. And what that does is that's extremely important because what it puts you in this little slightly anxious state where you want to work, you want to be productive, you want to get things done. And I found that being productive was the best thing I could possibly do for my mental health and overall well-being. So something like the podcast right here, this has helped out a lot because what people see are the final product. They don't see this Riverside screen right here with
Yeah.
our names, and I could see the volume going up and down. I could see the record button, and then they don't see the downloading and putting it in the editor and the hours of editing and then naming it, the bio, the thumbnail, putting it on every
Yeah.
platform. That is all part of the production, and you feel good about it. Because a lot of us, let's just be honest, we don't like going to our jobs, our day jobs. You know what I mean? Even though we feel productive in it, and it does feel good. We want to be able to do something productive. We want to be able to um, have some kind of passion project or something outside of the day to day, 9 to 5 job or whatever you do, like video games or like movies. And that's where pop culture can come in, and we can talk about how that is extremely important and helps the your mental health and everything. And last thing I'll say is, that this all affects your mental health. I was a history major in college, and you can't talk about history or study history without involving politics and without involving religion. All of that goes together
Inevitably, yeah.
inevitably. And that's the same thing with our own bodies. And I hope I don't get this wrong. I think it was Socrates that talked about the relationship between your body, your mind, and your soul.
See if I can find it.
And I studied a
For
little bit of that. Was it?
Is it this? For Socrates, our bodies belong to the physical realm. They change, they're
Yes.
imperfect, they die. Our souls, however, belong to the ideal realm. They are unchanging and immortal, surviving the death of the body.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking of. So there are, you can say 3 aspects, you could say 4, whatever. All of it's connected though. If your physical well-being is not there, your mental health is going to be not there, and vice versa. If, let's say, you're spiritually not there, that's your soul. If it's not there, your mind is not going to be there, your body's not going to be there. It all works in tandem, and we can obviously dive further into that, but that's just kind of what I have to say about the relationship between all of them. And it's extremely important. So I know you have a question, and we can just continue going down this very important and complex topic.
Yeah. Well, I want to first touch upon what you were saying about like like when you watch or listen to a podcast, all you see is the final product. You don't see everything that goes into it. I started because like I'd say like a year or two ago, I got this feeling like maybe I'd want to try being an actor. Like try taking acting classes. Like what do I like? I kind of like one of the things I'm trying to do is like push myself to just try things because I don't. It sucks because
Yeah.
I don't like being stagnant, but I also get anxious about having to initiate even the smallest amount of change in my life, which is something I'm trying to break out of. It sucks, but it comes with being an adult. Obviously, like your mommy and daddy aren't going to be able to schedule your doctor's appointments and stuff forever. Um, that's a fact of life. But I kind of had this preconception about acting. Like, I obviously knew that you had to emote to be an actor, but like when I started, I was just like, yeah, no, because like when I'm by myself, like I'll like do like a monologue from something just because it's fun, and I kind of thought, oh, I'll just show up at the acting class and I'll find a monologue and I'll do it how they did it, and then that's acting. And then the teacher we have, he's fairly strict with us, but he's great and he really knows his stuff. He basically showed me, as he shows everybody, that like, oh, being an actor is about like interpreting stuff in your own way. Like if you have a script, instead of just imitating a performance you saw, like read the script. How do you feel about this character? How do you interpret the dialogue? And like there was this one moment where like he got me to do my monologue from Blade Runner. It's like close to the end, the villain. And he got me to give this like really emotional performance. Like it was obviously like he has this philosophy that like he wants you to start by being over the top, because like if you're over the top, he could scale you down to where you need to be. But if you're like low, like not where you need to be, then he can't, magically build you up there. And then I gave this like, like really over the top, but like, like sad performance and stuff. And like, I was like kind of thinking about a loss in the family that I'll specifically talk about later. And then I was done with it, and I was just like, I felt weird because like I had just like been vulnerable in front of this small group of people, and that's not something I'm used to. So like, that was kind of a lesson. Like, if you want to make art, like, there's no way to make art in a kind of sincere way. Like, you either have to like just put every part of your soul, every part of your heart into it, into whatever you're doing, or it's just not going to work. Like, there's no way to
Yeah,
cheat the system here. So that's something that I've been learning. And then yeah, what you were saying about mind, soul, spirit, how those things work together. When I looked up Mental Health Awareness Month when I was writing this episode, and I came across the website for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They're basically this organization dedicated to like various services and stuff, educating people about mental illness, mental health, and all that stuff. And a few of the things they have are they have like walks, like how people have like walk for breast cancer, walk for arthritis, walk for this. They have those. So if you want to try to find one in your state, your area, that's a great place to go. They have a tab where you can write in and share a story that you have if you feel comfortable doing that. You can become a ambassador, and they actually have this list of like famous people and like influencers that are partnered with them. And I think it'd be kind of cool to like, if I ever get any clout in my life, I'm not chasing it, but like if I find myself at some level of notoriety, I think it'd be cool to try to become an ambassador of them or something like them, because
that would be cool.
I yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'd be a way to kind of give back to the world. But the one thing that I saw that I wanted to zero in upon, FaithNet and what it is. I have a little bit of a speech impediment, guys, so that's what that is. I probably didn't need to. So basically they like just work with like various religious. Oh, NAMI FaithNet is an interfaith resource network of NAMI members, friends, clergy, and congregations of all faith traditions who wish to encourage faith communities who are welcoming and supportive of persons and families living with mental illness. Now, I'm obviously not going to read the whole thing, but I saw that, and I thought it was really cool because I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but my my experience being in Christianity in the time that I was, not all, to be fair, but like it seems like a lot of Christians or just religious people in general, for some reason, like either they're just ignorant about mental health or they don't like think it's important. Like it seems like some religious people are like opposed to science, which is weird. I never understood that. But I thought it was really cool that like that community is becoming like more educated, more aware, like wanting to help people with mental problems, like mental health issues, mental illnesses, and all that. And I hope that that grows over the years, and that one day that's not stigmatized in the religious community at all. But I know that you're still a practicing Christian, and that's a big part of your life. That's a big part of the way that you cope with various things. So I just wanted to ask you to talk about what your experience has been like in all the time you've been a Christian, as far as like struggling with certain mental problems, talking about those with people in your group, and how you may have been received and stuff, whether positively or negatively.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're completely right, where a lot of people don't consider the fact that your physical health and your mental health are directly tied to your soul or your spirituality. It's, how can you be okay spiritually? How can you be involved and you know in touch, or just in a state of spiritual well-being when your mind isn't okay, your mental isn't okay, your mental health is suffering? Or I know that you kind of focused a little bit on the mental health side. What really bothers me is also the physical health side of that whole conversation as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it
like they
taught,
just to
yeah,
like interject, like in from my experience in like my church, like it was kind of misusing of that verse that says brethren, be not weary in well doing. And then so like they'll take that and they'll be like, oh, see, like it's like a bad thing to want to take a break from ministry work and stuff like that. Like you're not getting lukewarm, are you? And it's like, no, but I'm a human who also has a real job and I have other stuff going on. Like, why is it so bad if I just don't want to do this for a while? Like I thought that was so insensitive.
yeah, I love it. We could go down a rabbit hole, and it talks about specifically, if we're talking about dialing in on Christianity, it talks about your body, and how can you just treat your body with no care at all, and expect to be okay spiritually? And obviously it talks about your mind, and having a stable mind, and how can you be okay, how can you be involved spiritually, or be okay spiritually at all when your mind isn't stable? And it talks about that. So in my experience, usually this, you bring up, okay, I have these questions, or I'm struggling here or there spiritually. And what's funny is a lot of times you're struggling because it involves another aspect of that circle I was talking about, with you struggling physically or mentally. There's a lot of people that have some kind of physical issue that really affects them uh, spiritually, or a lot of times someone is just have some serious mental health issues and it's affecting them spiritually. And I think a lot of times the answer is, or at least where you can look to improve your spirituality, is looking at your mental health or your physical health. And it goes vice versa too. So it's like you can't just ignore one or two or every other aspect. They all work together. And that's something, I'm glad you asked me about it, because there's actually a podcast that I was talking to my friend about at the gym one day, and the podcast was literally about this, where it was your physical, your mental, and your spiritual self is all connected. Like how I told you earlier with Socrates, he brought up, it's all connected. And I think that's, before you go any further, you have to understand that, and that it's all connected. So like for me, if for instance, we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, if I am struggling with depression or anxiety, or those are just the big ones I think we all kind of struggle with, especially with post pandemic and everything going on. It's a very sad time.
Yeah.
I want to get into the pop culture side of that too, because there's a lot of fighting, there's a
Well,
lot of
that was a big
hatred.
part of
Yes.
quarantine for a lot of people.
So
That
yeah.
you could say pop culture saved a lot of people's lives in that time.
Yeah, so and there's that side of pop culture, which I can't wait. We're going to get into that because that's huge. But um, if if you're not okay mentally, like you're struggling, like I said, you're struggling with depression, anxiety, you're sad, whatever. You're just angry at everything. I remember those videos. I had to unfollow and unsubscribe from all of these channels because I realized they were just, what's it called? They were just, all of their content was negative. All of it was, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible.
What do you mean, like What, like, are you talking about like Christian channels?
Just in general, just
Oh,
people. Yeah, just even if it was like, um, even if it was like any kind of religious or spiritual content, or if it was like reviews, or if it was podcast. It was just like there's this whole section that is so negative where it's like, hey, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And think about how detrimental that is to your health in general, especially your mental health and your spiritual health.
yeah, that's
That
why
is
I'm like trying
it's
to move
terrible.
away from mainly Twitter and TikTok, because all it is basically just people attacking each other, and it's just like a circle that never ends. Like,
Yeah. So
I'm good.
one thing I did personally that really helped me with all of this is I got rid of all of my social media except for Twitter. And here's what I did with Twitter though. I went through very like meticulously and curated it and personalized it, whatever you want to call it, where I only see what I want to see. Really, there's not random things that pop up that I don't want to see. And if it does, I make sure, I make it a point to say, hey, I don't want to Twitter, I don't want to see this content anymore. So mine is very personalized for me. So I use it a lot for news and pop culture stuff, and especially like the podcast. And I had to make sure I went in and personalized it for me. I had to unfollow people. I had to unfollow topics, all of that. So that was huge for my mental health. And like I was saying, unfollowing those channels that just tore down everything. And, in doing that, I actually found something that has helped me, which is, I'll bring up two things. I follow a guy. His name is, I actually met him. It's funny. He's a podcaster. Yeah, he has a whole podcast network. He's a really cool guy. His name is Lord Cognito. He has this rule where on Twitter, if he wants to follow you, he goes to your tweets and he looks at your last, five or so tweets. And if they're all negative, not going to follow you. If
Mhm.
your last, few tweets, you don't know the person, your last few tweets are just tearing stuff down, I don't want that on my timeline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have adopted that little, you know, thing that he does. I like it a lot. But one thing I've personally done with this podcast and my content, or whether or not I'm putting something out on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, I do 90, I do 9 to 10, 90 to 10. So what I do is if I'm complaining about something or I'm talking about something I don't like, I let that be 10% of the conversation. And I let the other 90% be talking about something I either like or talking about a positive aspect of it. Because there's credit, there are legitimate reasons to talk about why you don't like something. That's how you kind of critique things, and you can filter out what you don't like and figure out how you can make it better. Obviously reviewing and being honest and whatnot, that is very important. But you don't want to make that be the majority. So have that be a smaller part of the conversation, and have the majority of it just be focusing on what you like or something that you can
Yeah.
be positive about. So
One thing that I started doing recently is, like, if I'm on Twitter and I see either like a really unhinged take about something, or like a lot of what I'm seeing, I'm not going to name specific fandoms because I'm not stupid enough to paint a
incite that.
target on my back and, let them have a free shot at me. But there are certain fandoms that it seems like some of these people, I don't know what ratio it is. It's probably not even a slight majority at all. But it seems like all they do is just attack other people from the fandom who have a different perspective on certain things.
And
And
how easy
I'm
is it
just
to
sitting
get
there
pulled into
like,
that? Yeah.
what the hell? Like, what is this? Why? What? Like, I don't know. It's just like there's some people who, like, they make content online and they don't ever have a thought where they're like, "Am I wasting my time doing this?" It just never occurs to them. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
want to see you. I don't want to know that you exist because you're bringing me down. Like,
I've had that same thing where I'm like, think about the time they're wasting and energy they're wasting on this, and then I'm like, man, if I look back at the times where I was just complaining or whatever, and I'm like, I'm just wasting my energy with this. Um,
yeah,
it's
that's one thing. Like,
yeah,
I'm somebody who, if I like see someone say something dumb, I have to like clap back at them in a sarcastic way. And I think part of
I do
my
that too. Yeah,
maturing process for this year is restricting myself from really doing that at all, because I just do it without thinking, and then sometimes it's like just what, like, they'll say something and I'll be like, whatever, and then I just don't reply anymore. But like sometimes I'll say something that's blatantly wrong, and I didn't bother to look it up, so then I realize I'm wrong, and I'm
that's the
like,
worst.
oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah,
And
it's
and
weird.
when you see people like that in these fandoms, how easy is it to just get sucked into it and just want to
uh
complain even harder?
I have that kind of personality where like I'm really sensitive to the energy of people around me. So I that's the thing I have to watch this year. Just
Yeah,
not that I can live in my own isolated bubble, but we have the power to an extent to curate our own environment,
yeah,
like
yeah.
mentally, emotionally, and even kind of in the real world, to an extent.
So one thing I'll add right here, I want to actually study this more. I'll be very brief. I really want to study this more, and I've been trying to look into it, but it's hard to find certain things on it. But it's kind of like when you want to do something, like literally you have the desire to do something, your body creates the willpower and the literal energy to do it. So if you like you're saying, you want to be intentional about doing those things, then you can do it. You know what I mean? When you're when you're struggling with mental health, you get into this hole, this deep, dark hole where it's like, I don't have the power to do this, or I don't have the ability to choose this. But in reality, you do. But you can't just tell somebody, and sometimes it's hard to just realize that you have the power to do that. But when you really have the desire and you really want to change or you want to improve, your body your body will allow you to do it. You will have you'll have the ability, you have the energy, to change. And that's one thing, I love working out, and I've really gotten into like nutrition and health and whatnot. And it's like it's really hard sometimes to cut certain things out physically. Like it's really hard to not eat cookies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you relate that to mental health, sometimes it's really hard not to engage in those conversations of just hating on something. But it's like, I can just not do it. It's hard sometimes, but it's like I have the ability to just not do that. And it is going to be beneficial to me in the end. You know what I mean? So I hope I answered some of your questions there with that. About my experiences regarding you know mental health and kind of what I've done to cope and you know
No, that was some good.
educate myself.
What you were saying, real quick about like if we want to do something, our body creates that desire.
Yeah,
I like wonder, like, because like there are things in my life I know I want to do, but in my spare time, for some reason, I just can never bring myself to do them. I can't figure out why. It's like, is that like, I wonder if it's just a matter of like, I feel like I have to start like resting my brain, because I feel like, because one thing that I heard is like people think that like, like they don't sleep enough, because they always feel tired. But no, it's your brain's constantly tired,
yeah,
which makes your body, feel worn out. So I feel like I have to, it's not as much like trying to make myself physically do stuff, but more internally being like, okay, but like what am I, uh, how am I not taking care of my brain that it's tired, that it doesn't want to do these things? You know
yeah.
what I mean?
And I love that you worded it that way, because it's not just a mindset. It is a mindset, but it's not just a mindset. It's what are you physically doing to create that environment for your brain? Because let's just say, for instance, you have a buildup of adenosine, which is what makes you feel tired. It's, if you're just constantly chugging energy drinks to give yourself motivation,
Oh
well,
yeah.
that's blocking the adenosine receptors in your body, which is causing a buildup, and you're just going to crash and feel worse after. So it's like, what can the healthy, what are the healthy habits and things that you can do, like physically do, to curate this healthy, mental state of being productive, being awake, whatever. And that gets me wanting to talk about a little bit about dopamine. So where do you want to go from here?
Uh, I mean, you could talk about dopamine if you want, but I want
Okay.
to real quick
Yeah,
what you one thing about feeding my mind is that I think I've had this opinion my whole life that I still think it's mostly true that I'm a introverted person, but then I've been finding that like it's like weird because like in 2020, when we were quarantining, that was ironically not that I've never had a big social circle to begin with, but excuse me. I in that year in 2020, I was spending a lot more time with my dad and one of my cousins. Like we would hang out, have like really personal conversations about stuff, just play games, drink a little stuff that isn't meant for kids. Um in a responsible way, of course, as all things should be. But and like that was like I think that was part of why that year was like such a monumental time for me. And then I don't know, I kind of like after that, people get busy. I wasn't hanging out with people as often, and like I've always think, oh, like when the weekend comes, when this holiday break comes, I'm just gonna like watch movies, play video games, and just chill by myself. And then I'm by myself and I'm miserable. I can't
yeah,
enjoy it. And then I feel like I recently realized I feel like I am a social person, but my battery is just significantly smaller than people that are extroverted. But like so that's one thing like in June, there's this fan convention in Philadelphia that I'm gonna go to.
I really want to go.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
take a yeah. We could talk about that tomorrow, maybe because
that's
I sent
true.
you
Yeah,
the link. And
I know. I've been thinking about it.
yeah, yeah. I already know what I'm gonna cosplay as. Like I'm gonna take a trip that I initiate myself. I want to take trips. Here and there on weekends. Now that it's summer, to like cities. That aren't too far away from me. Stuff like that. Just like try and initiate stuff socially as much as I can. Like I kind of feel like like I've come to this realization that just being at home isn't doing me any favors, and I've been the only reason I keep thinking that it does is because of complacency, like I alluded to a while ago. Like I think I let myself get too stuck in a rut, and like I just really need to shake things up, which is a thing I'm scared of. That's a big struggle. So
I completely understand that as somebody who is introverted.
yeah, man, it's creepy. Like
Sucks.
even like the smallest thing, but like it's just like I think about it, like oh, what if I go to this like convention by myself, and like I meet some cool people, have some cool memories, and it's like I think about all the stuff I could accomplish if I just took the leap. And I don't know, I'm just getting to the point where I'm just like, screw it, man. Like, just why not?
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
I completely relate to that. It's exactly where I'm at.
which I think, if I'm not mistaken, actually, uh, finding joyful experiences, feeling pleasure, and that is actually related to dopamine.
Yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to get into it.
So
That's
I'll
yeah.
let you jump into that real quick, and then we will talk about the main entree.
Yeah, so it's funny. Literally all of that. You're talking about feeling like rewarded or pleasure from it. And that's the dopamine. And when that's messed up specifically, in your body, it really is detrimental to your mental health, which is then detrimental to your physical health. And it's important to be careful of how you um, treat your dopamine receptors. It's what you feel rewarded from, and it's hard being introverted too, because you don't feel rewarded by being social. You know what I mean? You feel more rewarded, I feel like, by just being productive, on your own.
Yeah.
Like for instance, doing this podcast, I have a dopamine rush by editing the podcast, not necessarily by being in front of a camera. I'm not extroverted like
yeah,
that. I
that's
love
I'm
putting it out,
still not
doing
great
all the
at
work in
it.
the
You hear
background.
me? I've said it like
Yeah.
I've struggled with a speech impediment for a while, and like I think I've gotten, like it's always something that is kind of going to be a thorn in my side. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just had to reach the place in my life like years ago where I was like, am I just gonna like not like am I just gonna be afraid to do anything because of these problems that I can't control? Like how like think about this. I know we all do it, but if you logically think about how dumb it is to let things that you can't control inhibit your life,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. And I'm gonna talk more in depth about that in a little bit when we talk about the pop culture. But like, it's like it's so weird how like our minds could know this doesn't make sense, but our emotions and our
Yeah.
bodies are like, no, but it sounds good to me, man. I don't care. And then
And
it's
that's
like,
why it's hard, because
no.
you have to be somewhat educated on it. And whether it's just someone kind of explaining it to you like we're doing now, or you researching it for yourself, it's easy to create just terrible habits for your mental health and physical health. So, one thing I try to do is I've been trying very hard lately to create just healthy habits to cope with life, because it's not easy, but you have to, like I said, educate yourself and create healthier habits, which we could do a whole episode on, habits,
Oh yeah,
especially because, being in pop culture, which with watching movies, watching content on YouTube, and, interviews, reading books. I've been reading a book recently, um, games, all of that, anything in pop culture. We could get into the how to have healthy habits and all that. That's also very interesting. That affects your well being and all of that. All the hormones we're talking about, your dopamine, your cortisol, all of that. So
yeah.
it's
Speaking
very
of,
interesting.
I just learned that low levels of dopamine can actually cause depression.
Depression, yeah,
So I just kind of had an epiphany when you were like talking about this, but like I think I spent a lot of time, finding that from like strictly pop culture and stuff. And that does happen, but like if you get pleasure from something, eventually it's going to have diminishing returns, as they say. So I feel like now it's like I have to find that source of pleasure in things that I don't usually do. And it's like scary, to like, be to like find new attachments and kind of free yourself a little bit from attachments that you've had for a while. But
yeah. Because
I
if
mean,
you
that's
don't,
where the real
yeah,
magic happens.
exactly. If you don't, you're not going to be feeling very happy or rewarded or pleasure in life, which goes way back to the beginning when you said you feel when you're productive, you feel better, you feel that. So
Yeah.
that's also very important. Do something productive. Like, that's why I call this my passion project. This is somewhat work, but I'm like productive and I love doing it, and it gives me a sense of pleasure, keeps my dopamine up. So
Oh yeah,
that's
like
my rant on that.
when I get in those moods where I'm like, my life's pointless. I don't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, at least I did a podcast episode.
Yeah,
You know,
something like that.
like it
Exactly.
doesn't have to be, and like it doesn't, in our capitalistic society, we can get conditioned to think that if something we're doing in our spare time isn't making us money, then it's not worth doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's absolute BS. And I would encourage anybody. I'm speaking to myself too because I'm still trying to learn this. But if you're in a dark place, or just in a little bit of a funk, it doesn't have to be that severe. Just find a hobby and just do it, not trying to think, oh, how can I like make this my new way of life and find freedom from, the typical grind, which is
Yeah.
the dream for some people, me included, but just do it because it makes you feel good and it brings you joy. And you know what? It's not too much. It's not selfish to try and seek a little joy. We all seek joy in things, some positive, some negative, but me and Caleb and a lot of you listening, I'm sure, find joy, comfort, solace, inspiration, all that stuff in pop culture. So that brings us perfectly. I'll
It
be
does.
waiting for my Emmy Award for that transition into our main topic, which is uh, pieces of art that were there for us at important times in our lives. Whether when we were kids, when we were teenagers, or even in the past few years. Now, that could, like, we generally talk about movies, video games, and some TV shows, but that could also include music, books, a freaking painting. I don't know. Have you ever seen the Mona Lisa? It's pretty nice, I guess. I don't know who that lady is. I hope
Why she keeps
she's,
staring at me?
yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about. Just a few pieces of art, and maybe even a few fictional characters that when we return to them or even think about them, they help us keep on moving forward. So I'm gonna
Hey,
let
hold on,
you.
real quick. Let me. I actually have a live. I have a live feed right now of our studio audience that's just going crazy over that transition that you just did. Uh, they're going crazy. It was amazing.